Hello, people. It's Salman Qureshi, and welcome to the Expat Brat podcast. It's a wonderful day, isn't it? You're out and about, and butterflies are flying around your car, making it look like it's spring, where it is spring. It is spring. Is it fall? No, it's fall. It doesn't matter. The day is beautiful. You're on your way to meet someone you haven't seen in a long time, and you're just excited about it, and everybody's just calling you up to congratulate you on the latest greatest thing you've done in life. And it comes with lots of love and money, so you can quantify it. And and you happen to just right now open your phone, and there's a text message from your local lottery, which you didn't even put your name in or buy a ticket for, but somehow you've won. That's the kind of day I hope you're having. So wonderful. Because I'm having a good day too. Yeah, if you've been listening to this podcast, then you know my inner struggles of being transiting from a young, fun, happy guy. I think I've always been nice to people and kind and loving, at least in my head. And as I'm growing older, I find myself sniping at things or just being more cranky. And I'm really, really trying hard. It's like an inner battle I've got going on, where I'm trying not to become an old, angry person who no one wants to be around. Okay? So that's where I'm at. And so I remind myself of all the good things. I like to show gratitude, people. So much gratitude for everything I have, including my short height. Gratitude. God damn it. Sorry, is it still recording? Oh, sorry. I've been sitting back, right? And I wanted to I wanted to share some stories from the past, because the way I see it, again, as I grow older, I'll probably lose some of these stories and memories and everything. And now I've decided this podcast is part entertainment, part a reminder for me when I get really old to listen back and go, oh yeah, that did happen in my life. So I don't know who this podcast is for anymore. If you're listening, thank you. But for me, it's a time capsule thing now as well. All right. So I don't know how many of you as expat, I've grown up as an expat. I was born in Saudi Arabia, and I grew up there, and it was a particular weird kind of world. All right. Just so you know, back in the 80s, it was this place that was transitioning and had all kinds of like hypocrisy. I don't really want to call it hypocrisy, because it's it was clear what people wanted, but there was just I don't know what the right word for it is, but there was so much like going on there. There's just this. It was like a new country, wasn't it? Even though Saudi Arabia technically has been around for like what, 100 years, 100+ years, but as a country, they in the 70s they had lost their king, this progressive guy, King Faisal, who was setting up television and schooling for girls and along with boys and all of that stuff. And then he got shot. And obviously the next king coming in was a bit more careful. I think it was King Fahd, right? Throughout my time in Saudi, he was the king. And, if I was in his place, I'd do the same. I'd be like, hey, I just want to rule. I want to enjoy this. He was in his earlier days known as a playboy, or like out there, because there's this rumor of him losing millions on poker nights in France or something. I was a kid, so these stories circulated, and I don't know if they were made up. There was no WhatsApp, so maybe they were true then. If there was WhatsApp, I'd be like, definitely not true. It's just something someone's spreading. But it was there, and obviously once he became king, he had to put on this front, or he actually changed. I don't know. Who knows what people are like behind closed doors. And I think he titled himself the custodian of the two holy mosques. So it was this kind of like this going back to conservatism after what happened to King Faisal, particularly. And I know there are probably other factors. I'm simplifying it, and a lot of Western influence. So you had people driving around in Cadillacs, you know, Chevys, GMCs, which back then were popularly referred to as gyms among Saudis, and every Saudi I think had one because they had like 5 wives that they could fit in. And hey, the stereotypes, I know it sounds like I'm stereotyping Saudis, but at that time it was true, okay? There were stories, there were neighbors, Saudi neighbors and stuff, who would lock their wives up before they went to work, right? So it's not, it's not made up. That, you know, you have to remember, these are newly urbanized people coming from Bedouin stuff, and then on top of it, this religious extremism. So it all combined to create God knows what in people. And so you had this Western influence. You had these movies and music. And I went to a school that was full of Western expats and teachers. And so you had this kind of weird mix of things. And I don't think that kind of time will ever come again for a lot of places. So there I was as a kid growing up. And amongst them, the most, one of the things that influenced my life, whether I liked it or not, was the existence of the religious police. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, they were called Mutawas. Okay, Mutawas were these mostly young guys, I guess, and they were formed. They were like the strict enforcers, and really, like, what do you call it, black and white, like, you know, the my God, I'm forgetting words. This isn't very exciting to listen to if I have to pause like an old man every so often and go, I can't remember the word I was trying to say. So, so these religious police, they were feared, right? They caused some real fear, and they had a big influence, and I'll tell you why in a bit. The whole thing was they were as powerful or more powerful than the police. They were a sister, like a sister concern, not a sister concern, like a parallel enforcer of law, but particularly religious laws, right? So they'd go around in their gyms, and these mutawas would, around prayer time. So in Saudi, prayer times happen 5 times a day. They'd go around making sure the shops were shut down. If you were not walking towards the mosque, if you're, you know, in a country where at that time there were probably like 99% Muslims, and if you weren't, you got busted. They take you in and cause a lot of trouble for you, maybe even fine you, jail you. So there was all these kind of things happening. Forget like doing something extremely naughty. These guys would just clamp down on anything they thought would affect your religion. All right. And the first time I was made conscious of them, as far as I can remember, I was sitting in the back seat of my dad's car. We were driving, and my dad and my uncles, and there were a couple of people in the car, my mom, and someone mentioned that Michael Jackson, this is the 80s, yeah? Around the time Michael Jackson released Bad. And so this is 1986 or 88. God. You know when it is. You can Google that. And Michael Jackson was declared banned by the Mutawas. Okay, the Mutawas basically because they took everything literal, like the religion. They basically said, if Michael Jackson is singing about being bad, then he wants people to be bad, and we can't allow that. Astaghfirullah, the devil and whatnot. And so his music was banned. And there were other reasons, right? They basically claimed that the Saudi youth was being misled from the path of righteousness by Michael Jackson. He was basically getting them to moonwalk towards away from the mosque, I suppose, in their eyes. And I guess it's true. So maybe they were right from their point of view. I don't know. What do you think? So they banned him. And Michael Jackson meant the world to me at that age and time. So, because I come back from London, I had his VHS tapes, and I would watch them all over again. I grew up watching Thriller. I was very young. I don't even know why my parents allowed me to watch it, because I was so scared of it. I would peek, run away, come back in. That's how I watched the Thriller video, because it was scary. And but he also like had a big impact on me because I wanted to dance because of Michael Jackson, right? I loved his music. He made me want to get up and wiggle, right? Shake that booty. And 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 I think in my early life I was considered a decent good dancer. I don't actually know if I was a good dancer, but because look, guys, look, putting it in context, okay? I'm growing up in Saudi where no one dances. So someone who can wiggle their body a little bit and not look like they're being electrocuted probably stood out, right? I was willing to dance, and that made me the top 5 dancers in Saudi, I guess, because there were only 3, right? And and yeah, so he had that influence. So I that news hit me hard, and as a kid, I didn't know how to process that. Well, what did it mean? Have I lost Michael Jackson for life? And so those VHS tapes became so dear to me as well. I watched them over and over again. One of them was the making of Thriller, and the other one were all his music videos and a general documentary of his life up until that point. And I loved it, right? So it was just exciting, and these guys banned it. They banned the music. They banned replicas of him. Anything, if you looked or imitating Michael Jackson was banned. All right. That's how hardcore these guys went. They basically wanted to erase him. And a pre-internet world, I guess in some ways it was easier and it was a bit more successful. So while other countries were struggling with smuggling drugs and stuff, we had people smuggling Michael Jackson audio tapes. Yeah. So that if that doesn't paint a good picture, what does, right? That's what made me conscious of this whole Mutawa phenomena. And again, it didn't hit me too hard. And then I started hearing stories from my parents and uncles about their experiences. One of them really stood out for me. Okay, so one of their modus operandi, if that's how you pronounce it, again, was Mutawas. If they caught you, they'd shave your head off. That was one of their punishments, okay? So a lot of people who got busted for doing whatever, if they were being naughty or they would just claim, hey, I went for the holy pilgrimage, the Umrah, the minor pilgrimage, and it's rewarding to shave your head after that. That was the cover-up. Most people knew you had gone to jail, all right? And so the Mutawas as punishment would shave your head off. And I had these 2 uncles who were heading to Mecca. Their story happened in the 70s, okay? And it still makes me laugh. One of them had long hair, when I say long hair, not like heavy metal long hair, probably till the nape of his neck or something. And the 2 of them are in the car. They get to the border of Mecca. So again, for those of you who don't know, because Mecca is a religious city, they have a strict rule about not allowing Muslims in. I think they still do have that law. I'm not sure. And so they check you at the border of Mecca before you were let in. They were pulled over, and my uncle with the long hair was asked to step into the office. Okay, this is the 70s. They haven't had a lot of experience. They don't know what's going on. My other uncle sat in the car for a while waiting, and the time passed by, and it went on and on and on. And they're like, "What's going on?" So he walks in to check in on his friend, who is having his head shaved. And sometimes, to embarrass you, they'd only shave the middle of your head, so you'd have to go to a barber and do the rest. So they were doing that to him, to the uncle with the long hair. But because this other uncle, this friend of his, dared to step in, they said, yep, you two, get on that next seat, on the next chair. And they shaved his head from the middle as well. So they both, for no fault of his, he got roped in. And they both had to shave their heads and come back. And my uncle, my dad, and everyone had to laugh at their expense because they got busted, right? So those were the kind of stories that went around. And so you were very careful around them. And these are minor punishments. I'm sure it got brutal sometimes. Some of them would have whips and stuff and start hitting you like you were cattle, So it wasn't all laughs. It was very frustrating. That story stuck with me. And kind of just, the embarrassment they wanted to cause you was just interesting. I had another family friend's kid who came in through the airport, and he told us about how he had just come back from the States, and he got lectured by one of the Mutawas at the airport who pulled him aside, who saw him. And he was like, is your name Michael or Jack? And he's like, no, it's Amir. And he said, well, why do you look like Michael? And you have long hair, and this is not the way of Muslims and stuff. So they were like Mormons in a way, right? Like very literal interpretation of everything. And and so he remembers just being really worried. For some reason, they didn't shave his head. Maybe, I don't know if the guy was lazy or they didn't have the facilities at the airport. But he said, like, go in and get your head shaved later, get a haircut later, right? So just really over-parenting, I guess, in a way. And I had my scariest moment then, the real impact of their actions, which I experienced, which really left a huge mark on me, was when in the middle of the night one night, we're sitting there and we woken up. We were all asleep, and there's like a little bit of just my parents are like running around. All right, there's this like a stressed environment in the house. I have two elder brothers, and they were both out, and my mom was just looking really upset. And my dad was getting ready to leave, and I was like, what's going on? I was really young still, like 8, 9, 10 maybe at most. And me and the younger siblings, my sister, me, and my younger brother, we're just like in panic. We're feeling the stress. We're really scared about what's going on. So apparently my brothers were at some party, and there was music, and they got busted by the Mutawas. Dun dun! And they got they were, I don't know, taken in with a group of friends that were all stuck there, and my dad was rushing over to stop them from punishing them further or something, okay? In that moment, I felt real fear for my brothers. I was too young to comprehend the situation completely, but I was afraid for them. I didn't know what was going to happen to them, and I was, the shaving head thing was in my head. But more than anything else, I felt so angry and powerless. When you feel powerless, that it creates a sort of anger that is different to any other anger you can ever have. I wanted this to stop. I was just thinking, even as a kid, I was like, my brothers were just having a bit of fun. That's what young people do. And for them to just climb down, be so, just kind of just like angry about everything that's going around. You can't have that. You can't do that. Yeah. It just, that moment was the angriest I've ever felt. I was afraid for my brothers. I was just worried sick. And it still, plays in my mind sometimes when I really think about it. And I don't know what I was more angry about, when they banned Michael Jackson or did this to my brother. I'm being honest, okay? So it turns out my dad rushed in. He was slightly hooked up. One of my other brother's friend also, his dad showed up. They were both sort of well connected, so they kind of got the Mutawas to agree to not shave their heads, but to just send them to get a haircut. And apparently, like I said, they were just at a party with friends. There was music. There was a guitar. Oh, dear Lord, there was a guitar of the devil's instrument. And my brothers told me later, they asked, it was a friend's guitar, and they handed it to my second eldest brother, Sammy, and said, break it in front of us. And so he kind of tapped it slightly on the floor and said, yeah, it's gone. It's ruined now. And they said, no, break it into pieces. And so he looked at his friend who said, yeah, go ahead, man. We can't do anything about this. It was probably obviously an acoustic guitar for it to break. And so he had to smash it, which is kind of cool. If you think about it, in their haste to punish my brother and their friends, they kind of created a heavy metal rock concert moment where my brother's like slamming a guitar onto the floor, smashing it. So the irony of it, right? Probably, and he still had his long hair. No, actually, so my elder brother Fahad was the one with the long hair. And they made both of them get a haircut. Same thing like my uncle. It's like one of them was just stuck because he was there. And they both had to cut their hair short, right? It was hilarious later. And, the next morning, I just hugged them because I remember just being upset about it. And we laughed at it later. But in those moments are when you really realize what dumb people can do. So that one really left a mark, And I remember one of my closest encounters was around prayer time. We'd be out playing football or cricket, and sunset would happen, and that's the time for the Maghrib prayer. and you had to scram, right? And one of our games went over, and we had to rush, and suddenly we saw the GMCs, the gyms coming with the Mutawas, and we're like, run. So everyone scrambled away. I hit with a friend between this small alleyway between two buildings, and I just held my breath. It was like a war zone situation, right? And the enemy soldiers are there. And I just stood there because I was like, oh, if we get busted, I don't know what's going to happen. And the GMC slowed down around where we were hiding, and for a second I thought, that's it, I'm done, I'm gone. And one of them got off, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have my moment too. But for whatever reason, he got back in and moved off. They moved on, and me and my friend, I still, like, we were, it sounds silly, but we were panicked as hell. Our heartbeat was like racing, like Usain Bolt's speed or something, and that's the kind of stuff that just made me go, why is this happening? Why is this place like this? Now, recently, I've heard, in recent years, they first reduced their powers, and now they've completely stripped them off. And I think now they're done. I don't think they exist anymore, if I'm correct, especially with the way they're trying to open up in tourism and everything. But that was what it was like, everyone had a story about some kind of encounter. I had smaller encounters too, like another one which really angered me. This one was this one plays out to more of the hypocrisy with it. I was walking, I had this fat silver chain. I was like, the deal. This is when I was like 16, 17. I was trying to be cool. I had an earring, anything to kind of stand up against the establishment or whatever, right? So I'm there, I'm doing all this, I'm walking on the street with my friends, and this guy in a Cadillac pulls over right next to us, rolls down his window, bam, Mutawa, right? He looks at me and he starts lecturing me how a chain is not something men wear, and that those who wear it are wearing the ring of fire around them, and you're not Bob or Michael, this is an American thing. And he lectures. Luckily, he didn't see the earring because I was just like facing him. It was on my left ear, so I kind of just positioned myself so he can't see that side. I was just like, I don't want him catching that. That'll just blow his roof off or something. And he lectures me, and the whole time, like, he goes off. First of all, I'm like, you feel like a kid, like someone standing and lecturing you about this stuff. So you're angry about that. And then it hits me. I'm like, he's lecturing me about all this Western influence, and he's driving a Cadillac. All right, or a Chevrolet. I can't remember. Oh, sorry, it was a Chevrolet. And I'm just thinking, dude, do you not realize your own hypocrisy? It just really just pissed you off, right? So those kind of things left me wanting to get out, and just being really angry at them all the time, and just knowing that we were powerless. And you're bringing in movies smuggled in, audio cassettes smuggled in. It was just a crazy world where two powerful forces were colliding against each other, and in the middle was just us young kids wanting to grow up and have some fun, and we were stuck in between that. And that's why I have a hard time when people talk about banning things or being extra strict. Even when I disagree or I know it might be dangerous, it's still a hard one, because that left a huge thing on my head about it. That's it. That now in my psyche why it's like what it is, okay? And those are stories. And if you ask anyone who grew up around that time, I guarantee, they'll all have a story. Except for my friends who lived in these expat compounds, especially the Saudi City compound. It was heaven on earth for anyone growing up there, because you knew the Mutawas didn't come in there, they weren't allowed, and so everybody was much more free. Women drove, they didn't wear abayas. It was just like a whole different world, right? And something you aspired to as a kid on the outside. If I made friends inside Saudi City, because I could say I'm going to go in and see them, and I get to experience this freedom, right? That's the state of mind we had. So, yeah, everyone else probably did have a story, and that is my life in Saudi with the Mutawas, man. Some great times, I guess. Some great memories. Anyway, I got to run. I got more stuff to do, more butterflies to see as I drive through the streets. And I hope you guys have a great few days ahead. Till next time, guys. Take care. Bye. Or as a dog would say, woof.